Yesterday at Anthony Joshua's boxing match, Conor McGregor did an interview with Ariel Helwani where he essentially confirmed his intention to leave the UFC. We're going to take a look at that interview in a second because it's not a very long interview. And I think there's one moment in this interview that a lot of people gloss over. And it's never been more clear to me that Conor McGregor is setting up his post-UFC career. And what I mean by that is I'm not talking about, the Black Forged In or any of these other kind of business prospects. I'm talking about his post-UFC fighting career. It's never been more clear to me what's going on behind the scenes. And that's not the only bit of information we've gotten recently, because Conor McGregor did a BKFC post-fight presser the day that Michael Chandler versus Charles Oliveira got announced. Then more recently, Dana White did a Q&A press conference for some boxing promotion for that boxer that he's promoting, where he was asked about Conor McGregor's return date. And we're going to break it all down in this video. And I'm going to give my theory on what I truly believe is going on in this entire Dana White UFC Conor McGregor saga. Let's jump right into it. We're going to first look at Conor McGregor at the BKFC post-fight press conference. I covered this recently a little bit in my Michael Chandler video when the fight was announced for him to fight Charles Oliveira. But this is still worth looking at right now because it shows me that Conor McGregor is ready to move on from the UFC. And it also shows me that Conor McGregor and Dana White and the UFC's relationship is hanging on by a thread. I mean, we're this close. We're this close to seeing a falling out between Dana White and Conor McGregor. Listen to this.
So, Conor, earlier today, Dana White announced that Michael Chandler was going to be taking another fight prior to fighting you. You've expressed interest in fighting Jeremy Stephens. Where do you feel that you are at in your career right now?
I got tested this evening. I got tested today by the Drug-Free Sport Agency. I'm the most tested athlete on the roster by more than twice the amount. I believe I'm tested maybe 13 times. The amount of seconds it took me to finish Jose Aldo, 13 times.
Which is crazy that he's asked about what's going on with his UFC career, and he launches into a rant about how many times he's been drug tested, which this topic is almost worthy of its own video, and maybe eventually I'll get to it. But since the UFC got rid of USADA, the new drug testing system is basically in-house. Now, don't get me wrong, the UFC makes it seem like it's all these independent arms, like Drug-Free Sport, and then they have these labs. Essentially, it all comes back to George Piro, who is the head of the drug testing agency company that the UFC essentially started up. And now it's an all in-house drug testing agency where the lab does the testing, but it sends it back to George Piro. George Piro asked Drug-Free Sport to go test these athletes. So it's really all in-house in a way. I mean, at the end of the day, the results, the punishments, the, amount of quantity of drug tests that are acquired from each athlete, that all comes back to the UFC. And do you guys think it's suspicious? And when I initially covered that this new drug testing program was in-house, I said, look, this is problematic for a multitude of reasons. But one of the concerns that I raised was a weaponization of the drug testing system. Do you think it's a coincidence that Conor McGregor is fighting out his UFC deal and he's being drug tested the most in the organization? After they didn't mention a word when he left USADA, he was going to come back. They were going to give him an exemption potentially. And I know people are wondering, well, how is he even passing these drug tests? Because he looks coked up 24/7. There's in-competition versus out-of-competition drug testing. Out-of-competition, which is where Conor McGregor would be right now, cocaine would not be a violation of policy. But again, that's a topic for a whole nother video. But it's crazy. He's asked about his UFC career. He launches into a rant about drug testing. He's being drug tested too much.
And, actually, funny enough, Jose Aldo was number 2 in the testing. I think he's been tested 6 times. So I've been tested more than twice all these other athletes, yet I struggle to get a date. So, I've talked to Sheikh Turkey and said, Sheikh Turkey, can you assist me here? As far as Chandler.
Again, relationship is holding on by a thread. I'm being drug tested all this amount, but I struggle to get a date. I talked to Sheikh Turkey. And I'm asking him, can you assist me? Conor McGregor, the biggest star in the sport, has to go to some Saudi Arabian billionaire and say, can you help me get a date? Can you hold Dana White's hand and help me get a date? I'm trying to fight. There's more than meets the eye with this Conor McGregor, Dana White UFC situation for sure.
Rematching Oliveira, I'm happy with the date. It's November. Maybe we can still do it after, if they're not going to line me out till maybe December, January, February, or one of these dates. You know, maybe we can still do it. I'm just a bit, you know, out of the loop with it, you know. So all I can do is carry on doing what I'm doing. You know, I test under the testing administration. I train daily, and you know, that's it. Let's see what happens. Hopefully, it all comes to fruition.
So to summarize all that, I'm frustrated as hell. I want to fight. I'm being tested, yet I still don't have a fight. That's what you get out of Conor McGregor right there, all his statements. Now, one last clip I want to look at from this post-fight presser where he comes out and says it, look, I want to go box in BKFC. I want the UFC to allow me to go box in BKFC. If this is real promising for Conor McGregor's UFC future, isn't it?
When's a realistic timeline for you?
You know, like I said, I have 2 fights left on my UFC contract. My opponent that I was scheduled to fight has rescheduled another bout. I would love maybe an exemption or maybe a joint partnership, bare knuckle UFC, similar to McGregor Sports and Entertainment and Mayweather Promotions. Some sort of, you know, agreement where we can get busy, you know.
He wants an exemption to box in BKFC or a joint partnership. You think Dana wants that? You think Dana is going to go for that? Absolutely not. But Conor McGregor's frustrated, and I'm telling you, they are this close. They are this close to having a falling out. Now, I'm going to give my opinion, kind of a summary of what I think is really going on here, but I want to finish out listening to this.
I need to be busy, and right now I'm working to get there. So let's see what happens. Like I said, I have 2 fights left on the contract, and it's taken a minute, but, you know, patience is one of the most important skills a human being can possess, study, learn, and implement, and that's where I'm at right now.
I mean, if that doesn't just scream frustration, I don't know what does. And in every interview over the last year, if you followed this saga at all, Conor McGregor, every interview, I got 2 fights left on my deal. I have 2 fights left on my deal. I have 2 fights left on my deal. And his sunset clause, while we don't know exactly when it's creeping up very, very soon. So at some point, the rubber's going to have to meet the road, and the UFC is going to have to give him a fight, or eventually Conor McGregor is just going to leave the UFC without even giving them any of that revenue for those 2 fights he has left on his deal. But we'll kind of get into that later in the video when I kind of give my summary of what I think's going on. Next clip I want to take a look at. This isn't all that important to the saga, but this is something recent that's happened, and it was Dana White asked about Conor McGregor. And it's like, look, we don't know who he's going to fight. We don't know exactly when he's going to return. Basically, we know nothing yet. And I just think this is worth showing, even though it's a very short clip.
More going forward?
Yeah.
So just quickly, obviously the Conor fight is something people are interested in. Is the winner of Chandler and Oliveira the opponent, or are you looking at maybe a new opponent?
Is the winner of who?
Chandler and Oliveira.
It's going to determine when Conor comes back who the opponent is. Whenever Conor...
Michael Chandler just said, hold me now, I'm 6 feet from the edge, and I'm thinking maybe 6 foot ain't so far down. And he's thinking, I've created my own prison. I mean, imagine if he was still waiting. Imagine Chandler was actually still waiting. He didn't take that fight against Charles Oliveira. So, yeah, it depends when Conor comes back who he's going to fight. We'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. We'll listen to it a little bit more.
Conor is ready and he comes back. You know, he hit me up last night when he heard that I was here, and he's in New York right now, and he is training. So,
And last one.
So he's training. Not a whole lot of answer from Dana White there, but basically we'll see. Whenever Conor comes back, we'll see who he fights. It's no guarantee that it's going to be Oliveira versus Chandler. Now, the next 2 things I want to take a look at very briefly is this is a picture of Conor McGregor at the Anthony Joshua fight. Does this look like a guy that's going to be returning anytime soon? Imagine Chandler was still waiting on him. Imagine Chandler was still waiting on him. Because for me, that screams. Yeah, I want to get out of my UFC deal, and I want to go fight lesser matchups. I want to have less stringent drug testing, and I want to go make tens of millions of dollars, you know, where I don't have to share the majority of the revenue with the UFC, and I get peanuts compared to what the UFC is taking. And then the other thing I want to highlight is this video of Conor McGregor showing up at the boxing match. And I want you to read this tweet. It's very important you read this tweet. Bro, Conor McGregor is never coming back to MMA. This man is just enjoying life. And then look at this clip of Conor showing up to the boxing match. So there you have him showing up to the Anthony Joshua fight. And the tweet says, Conor McGregor's never returning to MMA. Well, guess what? According to the guy who posted that, and this tweet got 3.9 million views, okay? According to the guy who posted this, which it could be lying, maybe he made it up. I feel like this is a little bit too far to completely make this up and post screenshots of it. He says Conor McGregor liked the tweet. Liked by Conor McGregor. Bro, Conor McGregor is never coming back to MMA. Conor liked that. Now, Conor likes a lot of things on Twitter. You know, in the last year, he was liking a video of a explicit video of a man masturbating. So maybe, he accidentally liked it, or, maybe he did like it intentionally. We don't know with Conor McGregor, but that's not a good sign either. That's not a good sign either. And I don't think Conor McGregor wants to compete in MMA. I think he just solely wants to go to boxing, especially if he can go to BKFC, where he can box lesser names, lesser opposition, not have to worry about his formerly broken leg, and get wins and potentially get paid more. Essentially what Dana White accused Francis Ngannou. He wants to make more money fighting lesser opposition, even though Francis Ngannou had a dream to go box the best. Was he going to make more money? Yes, but he wanted to fight the best. I think Conor McGregor wants to go fight lesser opposition for more money, which I don't blame him. He's almost 40 years old. Now we have the Ariel Helwani interview at the event. Now, this is just a still image, but I'm going to play the actual interview for you. I have the still image up for copyright reasons. I don't want to get a copyright strike for this interview because it's from The Zone, or however you pronounce it. But there's something that was really glossed over in this clip. I actually missed it the first 2 times I listened to this interview. But we're going to jump right in. He's asked about Michael Chandler being booked against Charles Oliveira.
We'll see. My opponent that I had scheduled, Chandler, has got matched.
Are you upset by that?
No, it is what it is. I just take it on board and just rock on. My job is just to go to the gym, be in the gym, be in shape. And, one thing is for sure, whenever it is and wherever it is, I will be 100% ready. And that.
Imagine Chandler was still sitting on the sidelines. You hear Conor McGregor say, whenever it is and wherever it is, I just got to be ready. And when he was asked, were you upset that Chandler got rebooked? He started to say no. And then he said, oh, well, it is what it is. So I don't think he gives a rat's ass about Chandler. But one of the things is, I think the UFC, if Conor McGregor is unwilling to sign a contract extension, which, it's very clear that he's not willing to sign a contract extension, Michael Chandler, out of all the tough fights that are available in the lightweight division, I think Chandler's the most winnable matchup for Conor, to be quite honest. They're not going to give him Tony Ferguson unless he signs a new deal. They're not going to give him a Nick Diaz unless he signs a new deal. It's just not going to happen, but we'll get to that in a second. This next bit is where it really starts to get interesting. And it seems almost like it's nothing, and then all of a sudden he slips in a very vital and important piece of information here.
That's all I can focus on right now.
2 fights left, though. Do you think you get those 2 fights in 2025?
I must. It's the promised lands,
And if you could see his body language, again, I'm not playing the actual video of the interview. He lifts his hand up and he's like, 2 fights and then it's the promised lands. Because you have to understand, and I've said this before, Conor McGregor's the most underpaid fighter on the UFC roster. For the amount of revenue that he generates, I understand he gets paid, tens of millions of dollars from the UFC. For the amount of money that he generates, he's getting a very small portion of those profits. And if he goes elsewhere, he's going to get paid substantially more. And at the end of the day, that's what's most important to Conor. He says, 2 fights left on my deal, and then the promised lands. And he's asked specifically, what do you think? What do you think happens after your 2 fights?
2025.
I must. It's the promised lands. So we'll see.
What happens after those 2 fights?
I don't even know. I don't think no one in the space knows. I'm the highest generating fighter on planet Earth right now in today's space. And what happens afterwards? I'm not. After this, as I'm a free agent, I'm not so sure. But
as I'm a free agent, I'm not so sure. And this isn't even the part that I feel like was kind of glossed over by a lot of people. I feel like a lot of people heard this. It's when he starts advertising for BKFC. I feel like a lot of people missed what he said, which he's going to say in a little bit. But I must get those fights. I must get those fights. He wants his 2 fights, and he wants to get out of his contract with the UFC so he can do other things which he deems more worthy. That's going to make him a lot more money.
One thing I do know, I'm very excited that we have partnered Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship with DAZN, and we've got 3 world titles on the line.
So he starts advertising for BKFC, and this is where I kind of was like tuning him out a little bit. But at the very end, when they're kind of talking over each other a little bit, he drops a massive bomb that I feel like everyone missed.
For our debut inaugural DAZN event, live from Marbella, Spain, in an open-air bullfighting arena. We're very excited about that.
October 12th to be exact.
October 12th. Are you there with DAZN?
I will hope to be there. Last one.
It's different. It is different.
You would like to do it?
It is different. I'm speaking with Sheikh Turkey about it. Potential matchups for my own self. A lot of exciting things going on.
Okay, last one.
Did you guys hear that? Listen very carefully because they started kind of talking over each other a little bit here. Listen to it one more time and then I'll break it down.
I will hope to be there. Last one.
It's different. It is different.
You would like to do it?
It is different. I'm speaking with Sheikh Turkey about it. Potential matchups for my own self. A lot of exciting things going on.
Okay, last one.
He's talking about BKFC. Ariel Helwani says, would you like to do it? He said, I'm speaking with Sheikh Turkey right now about potential opponents for my own self. This right here confirmed to me that Conor McGregor's plan is to strike some deal with Sheikh Turkey or Turkey Al Sheikh, whatever you want to call him, between BKFC and Saudi Arabia. Conor McGregor is going to headline that BKFC card against a winnable matchup. And guess what? Conor McGregor's a partial owner in BKFC. The money that Saudi Arabia is going to be willing to pay to BKFC and Conor McGregor is going to be substantially more than anything the UFC and Dana White can offer Conor McGregor. That is a fact. And it's going to get very interesting because Turkey is in a relationship with Dana White. Well, not, that sounds a little weird, but in a business relationship with the UFC and Dana White. Conor McGregor is kind of going around Dana White and talking to Turkey Al Sheikh. You know, that could be a breach of contract. The UFC and Conor are getting frustrated with each other. And now he's talking about, yeah, I'm talking to Turkey Al Sheikh about potential BKFC opponents. Well, that's a bombshell that I feel like nobody picked up on. I mean, and I'm going to give my opinion on what's, going to happen and what's truly going on with the entire situation, kind of a summary in a second. But that is craziness. I can't believe that's not being talked about more. This happened, yesterday? It's barely been talked about. Barely been talked about. But there's a little bit more of the interview. Let's listen to the rest of it.
Who is facing you when you return? Last one.
Man, who knows nowadays? It doesn't matter. It does not matter. Just as long as I can get back and, whoever. That's it.
All right, thank you, Conor.
Thank you.
Enjoy the fight.
I'd like it to be Chandler. I'd like to get that squared away, so I wish him well against Oliveira, but let's see how it goes.
All right.
So he says that he would like it to be Chandler, but who knows? Whoever, whenever, it just must happen. Now, this is a very, very complex situation with the UFC, Conor McGregor, BKFC, Turkey Al Sheikh. And what I truly think is going on is there is a combination of issues. Conor McGregor kind of being unreliable. He's out partying. He's not training. He's shooting movies. He's claiming he wants to fight. The UFC and Conor trying to nail down a date, but they're worried. Is Conor going to show up? Is he going to pull out? Is he going to be prepared? But also there's the contract situation looming over it. So what I think has been going on is a combination of Conor being Conor, essentially, for lack of a better word, and then the UFC using that to their advantage to kind of draw this situation out for as long as possible. And basically the rubber is going to meet the road because Conor McGregor, the absolute latest he would have signed his last UFC deal would have been somewhere in 2021. It could be prior to that. It could be in late 2020. It could be mid 2020. It could be somewhere around there before he returned against Dustin Poirier in early 2021, I believe is what it was. Yeah, 2021 was UFC 257. And what I think could be going on, okay, or not could be, but definitely, the sunset clause for Conor McGregor is rapidly approaching, which is 5 years from the time he signed the contract. So depending on when that is, it's going to be sometime in 2025 or sometime in early 26 would be the absolute latest the sunset clause would come into play. And when the sunset clause comes upon, the UFC and Conor McGregor, Conor can just walk away scotch-free. He doesn't even have to fulfill those 2 fights. So the UFC, even though they've strung this out as long as possible, they've kind of devalued Conor a little bit, but also they've tried to buy themselves more time to secure a long-term deal with Conor. That's not going to happen. I would say that there's a 99% chance that the UFC and Conor McGregor part ways in the next year. Okay, you can mark that down. I said that. But the UFC still wants the revenue that Conor's going to generate in 2 fights. He's going to generate a lot of revenue. So it's either lose him in late 2025 anyway, early 2026 anyway, a year, which is crazy. Where's the time going? Or it's have him generate those massive paydays for the UFC and then let him walk away. And they're kind of in a tough spot because they want to devalue him on the way out. Because the UFC, make no mistake about it, the UFC does not need Conor McGregor, but they don't want anyone else to have him. So what I think's ultimately going to happen is I think the UFC is going to give Conor McGregor a fight in 2025. Whether it's Chandler or somebody else, you know, they're going to make him fight someone. I think it's going to end up being Charles Oliveira now that I think about it, because I think they want Conor to lose. They want to say, you know, well, Conor's on his way out. That's why we let him go. They want to, the UFC, it's like when Francis left. Dana White and the UFC tried to shape the narrative as we didn't want him anymore. They're going to kind of try to shape that narrative with Conor McGregor. And they're going to be like, look, he's losing. He hasn't won a fight. All of a sudden, Dana will kind of shit on him. Not as much because Conor has done a lot for the company. So maybe he won't go as hard. But they're going to want to cash in on those paydays. A lot of people are talking about, well, they want Conor McGregor for the next TV rights deal or the streaming deal. I think that's part of it. But I really don't think that's, you know, even 50% of the situation, because the ESPN streaming deal comes to an end at the end of 2025. Conor's gone by the end of 2025, early 2026, no matter what. Okay, so it really doesn't make sense because Conor's not going to fight for the next TV deal anyway. Conor's only fighting in 2025 if he does fight for the UFC, unless there's a contract extension, which I do not believe is going to happen. So it's going to be very interesting how this plays out. But Conor saying he's talking to Turki Al-Sheikh about potential opponents in BKFC. Every single interview he's saying, I got 2 fights left on my deal. It's no doubt in my mind that Conor McGregor is just playing for his post-UFC fighting career, which ultimately I believe will be a partnership between BKFC and Saudi Arabia. Conor McGregor is going to make $30, $40, $50 million probably fighting for Turki Al-Sheikh in Saudi Arabia, headlining a BKFC event, growing his business, but also collecting a massive paycheck, all while not having to throw kicks and all while not having to fight elite level opposition. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how this story plays out over the course of 2025 and the rest of 2024. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Please do me a favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel, share the video, and thank you so much for watching.